10.3 Keeping Your Speech Moving. Have you ever been listening to a speech or lecture and found yourself thinking, I am so lost? Or, where's the speaker going? Chances are one of the reasons you weren't sure what the speaker was talking about was that the speaker didn't effectively keep the speech moving. When we're reading and encounter something we don't understand, we have the ability to reread the paragraph and try to make sense of what we're trying to read. Unfortunately, we're not that lucky when it comes to listening to a speaker. We cannot pick up our universal remote and rewind the person. For this reason, speakers need to really think about how they keep a speech moving so that audience members are easily able to keep up with the speech. In this section, we're going to look at 4 specific techniques speakers can use that make following a speech much easier for an audience. Transitions, internal previews, internal summaries, and signposts. Transitions between main points. A transition is a phrase or sentence that indicates that a speaker is moving from one main point to another main point in a speech. Basically, a transition is a sentence where the speaker summarizes what was said in one point and previews what is going to be discussed in the next point. Let's look at some examples. Example 1. Now that we've seen the problems caused by lack of adolescent curfew laws, let's examine how curfew laws could benefit our community. Example 2. Thus far, we have examined the history and prevalence of alcohol abuse among Native Americans, but it is the impact that this abuse has on the health of Native Americans that is of the greatest concern. Example 3. Now that we have thoroughly examined how these 2 medications are similar to one another, we can consider the many clear differences between the 2 medications. Example 4. Although he was one of the most prolific writers in Great Britain prior to World War II, Winston Churchill continued to publish during the war years as well. You'll notice that in each of these transition examples, the beginning phrase of the sentence indicates the conclusion of a period of time. Now that, or thus far. The next table contains a variety of transition words that can be useful when keeping your speech moving. Addition. Also, again, as well, besides, coupled with, following this, further, furthermore, in addition, in the same way, additionally, likewise, moreover, similarly. A consequence. Accordingly, as a result, consequently, for this reason, for this purpose, hence, otherwise, so on, subsequently, therefore, thus, thereupon, wherefore. And you know what, guys? I am not going to read this whole list. There are suggestions for transitions that are addition, consequences, generalizing, exemplifying, illustration, emphasis, similarly, exception, restatement, contrast, comparison, sequence, sequence patterns, summarizing, diversion, direction, and location. So take a look at your book. It will absolutely guide you through all of those and give you options. Beyond transitions, there are several other techniques that you can use to clarify your speech organization for your audience. The next sections address several of these techniques, including internal previews, internal summaries, and signposts. Internal previews. An internal preview is a phrase or sentence that gives an audience an idea of what is to come within a section of a speech. An internal preview works similarly to the preview that a speaker gives at the end of a speech's introduction, quickly outlining what he or she is going to talk about. For example, the speech's 3 main body points. In an internal preview, the speaker highlights what he or she is going to discuss within a specific main point during a speech. Anne Subel was the first person to examine the effect that internal previews had on retention of oral information. Basically, when a speaker clearly informs an audience what he or she is going to be talking about in a clear and organized manner, the audience listens for those main points, which leads to higher retention of the speaker's message. Let's look at a sample internal preview. To help us further understand why recycling is important, we will first explain the positive benefits of recycling and then explore how recycling can help our community. When an audience hears that you will be exploring 2 different ideas within the main point, they're ready to listen for those main points as you talk about them. In essence, you're helping your audience keep up with your speech. Rather than being given a lone internal preview, rather than being given alone, internal previews often come after a speaker has transitioned to that main topic area. Using the previous internal preview, let's see it along with the transition to the main point. Now that we've explored the effect that a lack of consistent recycling has on our community, let's explore the importance of recycling for our community. Transition. To help us further understand why recycling is important, we will first explain the positive benefits of recycling and then explore how recycling can help our community. That's the internal preview. While internal previews are definitely helpful, you do not need to include one for every main point of your speech. In fact, we recommend that you use internal previews sparingly to highlight only main points containing relatively complex information. Internal summaries. Whereas an internal preview helps an audience know what you are going to talk about within a main point at the beginning, an internal summary is delivered to remind an audience what they just heard within the speech. In general, internal summaries are best used when the information within a specific main point of a speech was complicated. To write your own internal summaries, look at the summarizing questions in that table I mentioned before. Let's look at an example. To sum up, school bullying is a definite problem. Bullying in schools has been shown to be detrimental to the victim's grades, the victim's scores on standardized tests, and the victim's future educational outlook. In this example, the speaker was probably talking about the impact that bullying has on individual victims educationally. Of course, an internal summary can also be a great way to lead into a transition to the next point in the speech. In this section, we have explored how bullying in schools has been shown to be detrimental to the victim's grades, the victim's scores on standardized tests, and the victim's future educational outlook. Internal summary. Therefore, schools need to implement campus-wide comprehensive anti-bullying programs. Transition. While not sounding like the more traditional transition, this internal summary helps readers summarize the content of that main point. The sentence that follows the lead to the next major part of the speech, which is going to discuss the importance of anti-bullying programs. Signposts. Have you ever been on a road trip and watched the green rectangular mile signs pass you by? 50 miles ago, 25 miles to go, 1 mile to go. Signposts within a speech function the same way. A signpost is a guide a speaker gives her audience to help the audience keep up with the content of a speech. If you look at that table, 10.1 transition words, and look at the common sequence patterns, you'll see a series of possible signpost options. In essence, we use these short phrases at the beginning of a piece of information just to help our audience members keep up with what we're discussing. For example, if you were giving a speech whose main point was about the 3 functions of credibility, you could use internal signposts like, the first function of credibility is competence. The second function of credibility is trustworthiness. The final function of credibility is caring or goodwill. Signposts are simply meant to keep your audience up with your speech so that the more simplistic your signposts are, the easier it is for the audience to follow. In addition to helping audience members keep up with the speech, signposts can also be used to highlight specific information that the speaker thinks is important. Where the other signposts were designed to show the way, like highway markers, signposts that call attention to specific pieces of information are more like billboards. Words and phrases that are useful for highlighting information can be found in Table 10.1 transition words under the category Emphasis. All these words are designed to help you call attention to what you are saying so that the audience will also recognize the importance of the information. Key takeaways. Transitions are very important because they help an audience stay on top of information that is being presented to them. Without transitions, audiences are often left lost, and the ultimate goal of the speech is not accomplished. Specific transition words, like those found in Table 10.1, can be useful in constructing effective transitions. In addition to major transitions between the main points of a speech, speakers can utilize internal previews, internal summaries, and signposts to help focus audience members on the information contained within a speech.